Today, everyone on the Meat Lover channel will have the opportunity to listen to a very personal story of mine about an intimate moment in my life where I ended up cheating on my husband by getting involved with our neighbor's nerdy son. I'm going to introduce myself to you a little bit. I'm a 48-year-old crown, and my name is Helen. My melons are still hard, despite my advancing age. My butt is high, and my waist is slim. I love taking care of my body. I'm married to Freedy, he's 48. So far, we don't have any children, but we are planning to have a family in the future. However, our life has been anything but normal so far. Freedy is a very successful journalist, which means that his job requires him to travel frequently. In practice, this boils down to moving frequently. Almost every 6 months, we change states. The reason for these constant changes? My husband is often called upon to cover news in different locations. As his career requires a lot of travel and I like to be by his side, we end up living a fairly unstable life. Sometimes he travels and I stay at home, but the loneliness of being alone in a new city with no friends or family around can be very difficult. That's when my husband was offered a raise and moved to Curitiba. The offer was very good, so we moved in a matter of 2 weeks. My husband was very excited and anxious about the trip, as he said that Curitiba is a benchmark for quality of life and was voted the smartest city in Brazil. But for me, it was just another move. The bad thing is not that. But when we set foot in the city, Freedy stays with me for just a few days and then goes to work. Every week he has a plane to catch. We rented an apartment near the center in a quieter area. The apartment had 10 floors. We moved straight into the 10th. As we were in a hurry and there was only one apartment available to rent, we had no options to choose from, let alone time. The house was beautiful, with 2 bedrooms, both en suite and a very discreet location. On our floor, it wasn't a matter of days before we made friends with our neighbors, a couple called Roberto and Cassia, both in their 40s, and unlike us, they had an adult son called Benjamin. It didn't even cross my mind, but in a few months, Benjamin would be one of my deepest fantasies. Benjamin was the standard male, a short guy, about 1 meter 72, very white. He wore glasses, and I could hear him playing in his house, because until about 10 o'clock at night, he was very noisy. When I moved in, he didn't have anything that caught my eye. He was thin and shy, but that all changed a while later. At that time, he was already working out in the gym, but he had put on considerable weight as the days went by. By then, I was already good friends with my neighbor, since her husband and mine were away all the time. We always had afternoon coffee together. We would alternate, one day at my house and the next day at my neighbor Cassia's house. Then my husband went on another of his short trips. Freedy was going away for a week this time. We no longer had a good intimate relationship. At the height of our pleasure, we didn't spend much time together. So when he decided to go away for a week, it killed me even more. When I spent a maximum of 7 days without Freedy, I ended up craving other men. I swear I didn't want to, but I couldn't put out my fire with just water. One day, I was at my neighbor's house, having afternoon coffee with her, talking about things in life. "I'm going to get us some coffee. I'll be right back, Helen," said Cassia, getting up from the sofa and going into the kitchen. Suddenly, I heard, "Mom, do you know where the iron is?" It was Benjamin, Cassia's nerdy son, he asked, coming towards the living room where I was. When he arrived, I didn't expect to see him in just a towel. It was a shock for me. Since when has this boy been so appetizing? I thought to myself. I'd been without Freedy for a few days, and it was driving me crazy. I confess I even salivated at the time, and a shiver went down my spine. "Oops, I'm sorry, Mrs. Helen. If I'd known you were there, I wouldn't have come like this," he said, his face a little red with shyness. "No need to apologize, dear. But to change the subject, how strong are you? What's the secret?" To break the ice, I asked him this question, but I ended up reacting with desire, biting my lip and looking at him from the bottom up. I think he noticed my reaction at that moment, turned his face away in shame, and told me he was just dieting and taking his training seriously. I don't know if he was going to say anything else, but his mother arrived just then, interrupting him. So she got the iron for her nerdy son, and then Benjamin went to his room. I watched him, but he was a bit shy, staring back at me and looking away as he went to his room. I knew that his hormones were going through the roof. No matter how hard he tried to hide it, I knew. "Helen, you can deny it, but I saw you looking at my son," Cassia said to me, letting out a few hidden laughs. "Stop being silly, I'm old now. But if I'd been younger, your son wouldn't be single anymore, I replied, laughing along with her. But deep down, I wanted everything from him for myself. I began to pay attention to him and his routine, home and gym. One of the things I noticed most was that he interacted with his friends more virtually through his computer. His mother would leave the house early and come back around 8 o'clock in the evening, which was my routine too. Until then, I hadn't seen much of Benjamin. My husband came back from a trip and I was going to have to travel again. I was going to be away for a month and a half, but I was a bit tired and I told him that I would stay in that apartment if he didn't have any problems with it. After all, I was already working, and it was easy for me to support myself until my husband returned. He didn't question it and understood that traveling like this is tiring, so he kissed me goodbye and left in the middle of the night. My husband was never a man who was good in bed, and as he never had time for me either, I always ended up just playing with my toys. Then, at the end of the first week he was away, it was a Sunday afternoon. It was 30 degrees hot. I thought of the idea of sunbathing in the pool we had access to. There were several chairs there for sunbathing, so I grabbed a towel and sunscreen and went downstairs in 10 minutes, putting on a bikini and a robe over it. When I got there, I was immediately confronted by the nerdy son of our neighbors, Benjamin. For the second time, I saw him shirtless, and this time without shorts, just in a sun hat, sunbathing on one of the chairs. I could have imagined a lot of things at the time, but I had to keep calm because Benjamin, despite being shy, was already a man and was just holding back out of respect. Unlike Freedy, he had every perfect muscle and a visibly large tool. Apparently, he had been there for a long time because he was all sweaty. I didn't think twice and went to the chair next to his. "Hi, boy, what's up? How are your parents?" "I haven't seen them for a few days." "Tell them I'll stop by and say hi later," I asked, sitting down in the chair next to him to break the ice, figuring I'd make the atmosphere more relaxed. "Mrs. Helen, I thought you'd moved out. You've disappeared," Benjamin said with a surprised face. "When I had a brilliant idea, many will judge me, but my husband was going to be away for almost 2 months, and no woman deserves to be without fun for that long. No, my dear, I just divorced my husband. Now I'm starting to take care of myself so that my high esteem will increase, and of course, I'll have men's eyes on me." I told him I was lying about the marriage part because, as I told you, Freddie was just traveling. I knew that by lying, he would be more open to talking to me without fear of my husband. "But I thought you already trained, Donna Helen. With that body, I'm sure you already have the attention of many men," he said with a look of confidence. I took advantage of the fact that Cassia, his mother, wasn't around, and continued, "And you, would you look at me then?" "Just kidding. I know you wouldn't look at a crown like me." I laughed, noticing how red he turned when I spoke like that. I started to take off my robe and strip down to my bikini. I noticed that my nerdy neighbor couldn't take his eyes off me. I dropped my robe so that he could see me squatting down and grabbing it, in that position that all men love. At that moment, it was the first time I looked at him, and he didn't look away. I knew he was enjoying what he was seeing, so I continued to tease him as I wanted to do. I stood up and adjusted my bikini, taking the sunscreen and rubbing it all over my body. Meanwhile, Benjamin just looked at me covertly. "Darling, will you help me put the sunscreen on my back?" I asked him, pretending to be embarrassed. A little nervous, he accepted, and I realized that I was getting what I wanted, little by little. I had a beach chair, but I lay down on the towel on the floor, took off my bikini top so he could apply the sunscreen and lay down. "You can stand over me, Benjamin. You won't be able to apply sunscreen to me standing up." "But Mrs. Helen," he said, agonized that he was controlling himself. I told him to come with no problem, so he lay on top of me and started to apply sunscreen. Right then I felt as if something was growing near me, and I knew right away what it was. "Benjamin," I said in a serious tone, but only pretending. "That's what I was afraid of. It's hard for me to control myself around Mrs. Helen," Benjamin said to me rather fearfully. "That's not what I'm talking about, silly. I called your name because you're only applying protection on top. Lower your hands more and be careful where you go, silly." When I said that, I could see that he was relieved at the same moment. Then his mother called him to go upstairs and pack some things, and when he got up, I asked him if he could give me his phone number. I gave him the excuse that I'm terrified of cockroaches, and it was Freedy who killed them, so when I saw one, I would text him. Without hesitating, Benjamin gave me his number and then went to the apartment to help his mother. I only said hello when I had afternoon coffee at his mother's house, but I never talked about my husband with him around, because Cassia would know it was a lie right away. I was in my second week with Freddie out of the house. It was an early evening. Benjamin was playing and chatting with his friends. When I saw a cockroach in my bathroom, I sent him a voice message right away. Benjamin, you don't know what's happened. There's a cockroach in my bathroom. Can you help me? Don't say anything to your parents. I don't want them to think I'm disturbing you. It didn't take a minute for him to reply. That's okay, Mrs. Helen. Lock the bathroom door. I'm going now. He came in quietly and shirtless. I was already on fire, nervous about how I could make my plan come true. I was just wearing a towel, and as soon as he saw me, he swallowed and couldn't look away from me and asked me where the cockroach was. So he goes into the bathroom and kills the cockroach. It's just a cockroach, Mrs. Helen, he said, pointing at the dead insect with his hand. I was holding the towel with one of my hands. I didn't hold it right on purpose. When Benjamin showed me the cockroach, I screamed pretending to be scared and covered my eyes with both hands. When I did that, and the towel fell to the floor, and Benjamin was standing in front of me, and I knew that my presence was having an effect. With my well-groomed body, my curves were in evidence. Although I tried to cover myself, the impact had already been made. I noticed how he reacted, visibly embarrassed, but clearly unable to hide his interest. Sorry, Mrs. Helen, I can't stop staring. He was red with embarrassment, and his reaction didn't go unnoticed. No need to apologize, my love, and thank you for coming, I said, moving even closer. He seemed to have never experienced a situation like this before. It was clear that he was very interested, and the situation was becoming intense. I let the situation take its course while I explored his reaction. I confessed and told him the truth. Benjamin, my husband is just traveling, but I wanted you so badly I even lied to get you. Will you forgive me, I asked, throwing myself on top of him and kissing him several times on the cheek. I'll only forgive you if we can carry on with what we're doing now. I thought it was pretty bold of him, but he understood the game I was playing in my head. So we went to my room and couldn't resist. We stayed there for 3 hours. It had been a long time since I'd felt so good. Benjamin thought it best to go back so his parents wouldn't be surprised. So he went back to his room. That was my first time with him, but it wasn't my last. After that day, Saturdays were sacred to both of us. His mother would go out, his father would go to the bar, and he would come to my house to clear up the week's backlog. We did that, but it wasn't for long. Soon Freddie returned. I told Benjamin not to text me so often now, so that my husband wouldn't be surprised. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and I decided it was time to arrange a lunch with Cassia between neighbors. We chose a Sunday for the meeting. On the agreed day, I wore a tight red skirt and a white blouse. A casual look, but one that had my charm. Lunch started off relaxed, with lots of small talk and laughter. However, I couldn't help but notice the frequent and intense glances Benjamin threw at me. The mood was light, but there was that double entendre tension in the air. Suddenly, Benjamin got up and headed towards the back, where the bathroom is. I waited a moment and, to justify my absence from the table, said I was going to take a call. I left the table and followed him. When I entered the bathroom and turned on the light, there he was, waiting for me. Without hesitation, Benjamin pulled me into an intense, passionate kiss. I regained some control and said, "Careful, my husband and his family are right over there. Do you want to end it all?" He locked the bathroom door and replied, "I can't stop thinking about you. It's all your fault for leaving me like this. Let's relieve it quickly." He continued kissing me with an urgency that made me even hornier. I interrupted him, telling him I'd text him in the morning and that he should keep an eye on his cell phone. "It's dangerous. I want you too, baby, but we have to be careful," I said, trying to keep the situation under control. As I started to leave the bathroom, he grabbed me by the arms, pulled me back, and gave me more kisses, whispering in my ear, "I'll be waiting for your message." With that, we left the bathroom and returned to the table, one at a time, trying to look as natural as possible. The tension of our little escapade added a touch of adrenaline to the rest of lunch, and I knew that the evening still promised much more. In the early hours of that same evening, we met up, as I had promised. As his house had dogs, he had to come to mine. I had already left the door unlocked so as not to make any noise, making it easier for him to enter without attracting attention. When I opened the door, I was direct. "Don't make any noise, my husband is asleep," he replied with a wicked grin and a chuckle. "So hubby's sleeping well? Lucky for him, he won't get in the way of the fun." His teasing made my heart race. "Yes, he's in a deep sleep. Now come and do what he never does, big boy." Having said that, I lay down on the sofa next to him and started kissing him passionately without stopping. The night was filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Every sound in the house seemed amplified, and I couldn't help wondering if my husband might wake up at any moment. Fear and adrenaline were running high, making that moment even more intense and risky. With every touch and kiss, my heart beat faster, and the thought that the situation could be discovered at any moment added extra spice to our evening. There was nothing more stimulating than the risk and the certainty that if all went well, it would be one of the most memorable nights I'd ever experienced. Benjamin was a real release valve for me, offering a sense of relief and fun that I hadn't experienced in a long time. Our connection was intense and special, a refuge from the daily challenges. However, this phase didn't last as long as I had hoped. Freddie received an irresistible job offer to move to another city for a year, and I found myself in the position of accompanying him. The decision wasn't easy. I knew I couldn't risk my financial stability and my future for an adventure, however exciting it might be. Although it was painful, it was necessary to accept that the rare and precious connection I had with Benjamin needed to be left behind. Life often demands changes and compromises that challenge our personal desires and plans. I found myself needing to look for other forms of satisfaction and new ways of exploring my desires and fantasies. The experience with Benjamin was unforgettable, but now it was time to move on and adapt my life to the new circumstances. The change brought a mixture of sadness and opportunity. The connection I had with Benjamin was something you don't find every day, and the loss of that relationship left a void. However, it also opened up space for new adventures and experiences to come. I set out to find new ways to satisfy myself and explore new aspects of my life. Adapting was a process, but it's an essential part of growing and evolving. Now, with a change of scenery and new challenges in sight, I'm looking for new stories and experiences that can fill the space left by that special connection. Life goes on, and each new chapter brings its own possibilities and opportunities. Have you ever been in a similar situation? How have you dealt with change and the end of a meaningful connection? I'd love to hear about your experiences and how you face these challenges. If you like this story and want to see more content like this, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel.